Coming up on this edition, Seoul summons Japanese envoy to South Korea and slams Tokyo's recent review of its 1993 statement acknowledging its wartime sexual enslavement of women. In Brazil 2014 World Cup, Korea falls to Algeria 4-2 in Group H showdown. And a runaway soldier is captured alive after suicide attempt and killing 5 comrades. Hello and welcome. Happy Monday, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. A runaway Korean soldier suspected of killing 5 comrades has been captured after he shot himself in a suicide attempt. This after a long, intense standoff. Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
The standoff between the fugitive soldier identified by his surname Im and the authorities came to an end on Monday afternoon after 42 hours with an attempted suicide. Authorities say the 22-year-old shot himself in the side with a K2 rifle and has been transported from a military hospital to a private hospital for treatment.
The military collected the K2 rifle and ammunition from the fugitive soldier, who is expected to be referred to the Military Investigative Authority so they can determine a motive and cause for the attack.
Im was on the list of soldiers that needed special attention as he struggled adapting to military life. He was deemed unfit for frontline service in a personality test last year, although he retook the test months later and passed. Im killed 5 of his comrades and injured at least 7 others in a grenade and gun attack on Saturday. He later fled to an area some 10 kilometers from the military base where he opened fire on troops before being cornered by the military. The attack is the latest in a series carried out by Korean soldiers. 8 were killed back in 2005 after a soldier went rogue at his military base, and a similar incident on Gangwon Island in 2011 left 4 dead. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
The Korean government summoned the Japanese ambassador to South Korea this afternoon to lodge a formal complaint over Tokyo's review of a landmark apology on wartime sexual enslavement. Hwang Ji-ye tells us more.
With the relationship between Korea and Japan growing increasingly frosty over historical issues, Seoul summoned the Japanese ambassador on Monday. It came in response to Tokyo's announcement last week of its re-examination into the Kuno statement. Cho Tae-yong, Korea's vice foreign minister, told Japanese envoy Goro Baesho it's a historical fact that women were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II, and the whole world recognizes it.
The more the Abe administration attempts to dismiss the Kono statement, the more its credibility and international reputation will suffer. Japan will have to know that for sure.
The Abe government, while upholding the statement, claimed that Seoul was in close consultation with Japan when the statement was being drawn up. The Kono statement was issued back in 1993 by then-Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono. It acknowledged for the first time the forced sexual enslavement of some 200,000 women. In addition to calling in the Japanese ambassador to complain about the move out of Tokyo, the Korean government plans to register historical records regarding the so-called comfort women with UNESCO and bring up the issue during United Nations meetings. Korea's foreign ministry is known to have tentatively concluded that the Japanese review was trying to diminish the testimonies of sexual slavery victims and the apologetic tone of the Kuno statement. Hwang Ji-ye, ARIRANG News.
Another thrilling day of World Cup action has passed us by, with day 11 in Brazil bringing 2 late goals and a surprise big victory. But Team Korea would like a do-over, as its chances of advancing to the round of 16 have been reduced quite considerably after a 4-2 loss to Algeria. And for more, our Song Ji-san is joining me in the studio. Ji-san, disappointing, I would say. I mean, their performance in the first match against Russia was so much better.
I know, it was totally different, and it was very painful to watch them lose a goal after another. And the Koreans just gave it to the Algerians. In fact, the Algerians' goals were impeccably taken, but Korea didn't make it that hard for the Algerians with empty spots all over the defense. Korea lost 2 goals in the space of just 2 minutes after Algeria's Islam Slimani scored the first on the 26th minute. Ending the first half down 3-0 and without a single shot at goal, Korea looked down and out, but there were a few minutes of hope when Son Heung-min put a goal in the back of the net in the 50th minute. But unfortunately, the win was knocked out of Korea's sails just 12 minutes later when Algeria made it 4-1. Korea's Koo-jae-chol got a consolation goal at 72nd minute, but that's how it would end, 4-2 to Algeria. The Algerian team brought in 5 fresh faces from their first game, making it even harder for the Korean team on what to expect.
And many are questioning whether head coach Hong Myung-mo's best 11 first lineup was the best to take over Algeria.
I don't think so, not in this case, because in Korea's lineup there were hardly any change made, and it was actually the other members who were replacing Park during the second half. In the first case, it was Lee Geun who scored the first goal in the Russian match, and for the second match, it was Kim Shin who replaced Park Ju-young, who was barely noticeable throughout the whole match. Also note that more than half of Hong Myung-mo's players on the list are identical to the London 2012 Summer Olympics when they won the bronze, but this time the rather outdated magic did not work in Brazil.
So the big question at this point is, do we still have the chance to advancing to the knockout stage?
We have a very small window open because we have a draw in the first match, but the chances are very, very slim at this point. And there are 2 conditions. We must beat Algeria by a very massive victory. And another thing is that the Algeria failed to beat Russia. But even in this case, Korea needs a bucketful of goals as we have lost the most goals in the group. Belgium is the top seed in Group H with the highest FIFA ranking at 11th, and they have already qualified for the knockout stage. But on a brighter note, the Belgium's coach says he will not put his first 11 out against Korea as he wants to give a chance to other players who have not yet been able to play at the World Cup. But it's all scenarios and possibilities here because back in the past 2 World Cups, Korea finished the group with the same result at a win, a loss, and a draw. In South Africa, they made it to round of 16, but in Germany in 2006, they didn't because of the goal accounts and the game points, even though they were the same result.
I see. So I guess you will just have to wait till Friday.
Right. Actually, the Team Korea has 4 more days to prepare for what could be their last match. And let's take a look at where the other teams stand at this point and what games we have in store for this Monday.
And of course, once again, tens of thousands of Koreans gave up their sleep to come out to the streets across the country early this morning to cheer for Team Korea for its game against Algeria. But jubilation quickly turned into grief and disappointment as the Algerians netted 1 goal after another. Our Connie Kim was out on the streets of Seoul to catch the Red Devils in action.
Disappointment was written across the faces of the tens of thousands of fans who braved the heavy rain to cheer on Korea in their second World Cup group game against Algeria. Nearly 40,000 people gathered in front of COEX Convention Center, one of the biggest cheering spots in downtown Seoul, to support the Red Devils. Live music performances meant the atmosphere was festive before the match. The happy mood and optimism soon turned to disappointment, however, as Algeria stuck 3 goals past Korea in the first half.
Although Team Korea's first victory didn't come in the match against Algeria on this Monday morning, hopes are high that their win will come in their match against Belgium on Friday morning.
Today's game was a turning point to make it further in the tournament. I thank Son Heung-min and Koo-jae-chol for scoring a goal each. Although we lost today, I support our team and believe we can do well in our next match.
If we play like we did during the second half of this game, I think we have a good chance of beating Belgium on Friday.
The fans said the team's poor defending in the first half cost them in the end.
Our attacking play was pretty good, but we were vulnerable to counterattacks. You never know what can happen in football. I believe we can win against Belgium and qualify for the last 16.
On the day of the big match against Belgium on Friday, the cheers will be heard all the way to Brazil. Fans across the country refuse to give up hope that Korea can go at least one stage further in the World Cup. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
UN Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to persuade. Innovation is the key word in Korea these days, and the Korea's largest electronics company is staying true to that spirit. Thomson Reuters, in its State of Innovation report, said Samsung Electronics had the most patent requests last year in the mobile phone, smart media, and semiconductor categories. As for other domestic companies on that list, LG Electronics ranked number 5 in the kitchen appliance category, while Hyundai Motor was 4th for patents related to vehicles that run on alternative fuels. The OECD sees positive things ahead in the coming months for the Korean economy. It's put Korea's composite leading indicator of economic activity, or CLI, at 101.01 in April, ranking 12th in OECD. It marks the 15th straight month that the index topped the benchmark 100. The CLI provides an economic outlook for the 6 months to come based on economic data such as industrial activity, GDP, and capital flows. A reading above 100 indicates economic expansion. The U.S. Food and Drug Association has given the green light to a Korean-made drug for the first time in 11 years. Civextro, an antibiotic made to treat infections of the superbacteria known as MRSA, was developed by Korean pharmaceutical company Dongha ST. It marks the second locally developed drug to get the seal approval from the U.S. agency. Dongha ST expects to pull in annual sales of about $293 million from licensing royalties and technology support from the U.S. producer and distributor of its drug. Korea is often regarded as a global leader and role model for e-government, a public service that's growing increasingly important in this digital age. With that in mind, it's only fitting that the country is playing host to the UN's Public Service Awards ceremony this week. Kwon So-ah tells us more.
Nearly 1,900 participants from 126 countries are in Korea this week to celebrate Public Service Day at this year's UN Public Service Forum, both of which celebrate the value of public service to the community.
I think Korea is the correct place to hold this forum, simply because Korea has got tremendous experience in changing from a very poor country to becoming an industrialized, developed country.
In his keynote speech, Dr. Mahathir praised Korea's public services, especially in the realm of electronic government, which refers to the digital interaction between a government and its citizens. Largely because of its fast-developing IT sector, Korea ranked first in the most two recent UN e-government surveys and is now a role model for other countries.
Of course, in Korea, you are ranked top in terms of open government and listening to your citizens and the systems of open data, e-participation. All of those areas are very important, and we are happy that Korean government are doing very well and trying to learn some of these good practices.
A workshop will be held on the second day of the event on Tuesday, one that focuses on innovation and e-governance for sustainable development. The United Nations Public Service Forum is often called the World Cup of Public Service Gatherings, as it is the biggest of its kind. Korea hopes to draw international attention to its services through a successful hosting of the event and extend the so-called Korean wave into the field. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
With summer all but here, you're likely to see more Korean people wearing clothes made of Mushi, Korea's traditional fabric. This light and airy fabric used to be a staple of summer clothing here and is now catching on among fashion circles. Our Park Ji-won has more.
69-year-old Bang Oh-yeon has been weaving Mushi, or fine ramy fabrics, for almost her entire life. The skill she learned dates back to 1,500 years to the nation's west-central region of Hansan.
It takes great effort to make a fabric out of ramy plants, as it involves many steps. To make a suit, the weaving process itself takes about 10 days.
Mushi cloth weaving starts with the ramy plant, one of the oldest fibers cultivated for fabrics. Ramy first needs to be peeled off and then split to be made into threads. The handmade community process of weaving the fabric made it on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage List in 2011.
These handmade ramy fabrics are known for being light, breathable, and holding shape easily.
This strong yet airy natural fabrics has inspired modern fashion designers like Seo Young-soo, who recently held a collection composed of pieces made of Mushi fabric.
What's great about the ramy fabric is that it gives a beautiful natural silhouette to any design. It goes especially well with dresses, although it's not too feminine. Mushi can go well with any design, but I think it's the best fabric for high-end dresses.
For those who would like to experience the textiles themselves, the annual Hansan Ramy Fabric Cultural Festival is taking place this week in the west-central part of the country. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has called on world leaders to help deal with the pro-Russian uprising raging across the eastern part of the country. For more on this story, Paul E. is joining us from the NewsCenter. Paul, government forces there have been engaged in violent clashes with these rebels since April. What's prompted the latest call for help?
Well, despite offering a unilateral ceasefire last week, President Poroshenko faces continued attacks at the hands of insurgents against government forces in eastern Ukraine. According to the Foreign Ministry, Poroshenko contacted German Chancellor Angela Merkel and other Western allies as Kiev prepares a new peace plan. Moscow insists that the week-long ceasefire should be extended and that it would provide the foundation for dialogue in time. Meanwhile, the number of Ukrainian refugees fleeing to Russia has surpassed 10,000 as they attempt to flee the conflict.
The jets were flying just over my house. We were running away in whatever clothes we had on. They were probably looking where to fire. They flew over my house, they flew over Horlivka, and we were all running away where we could.
On Sunday, the wreckage of a Ukrainian helicopter involved in a military operation against pro-Russian separatists was found in the Kharkiv region along with the bodies of 3 crew members. However, authorities say it's still not clear what caused the aircraft to crash.
Now, turning now to the turmoil in Iraq and another decisive blow, I would say, to the government there. Sunni militants have seized control of border crossings to Syria and Jordan in the western part of the country. Local security forces there are struggling to hold their ground against this insurgency. How are they advancing so quickly?
Well, the momentum is definitely on their side. The militants are well organized, led by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. And with each area they claim, they continue to gain strategic supply lines and equipment left behind by the Iraqi army. The Iraqi government said as of Sunday they had lost control of all border crossings that line up with Syria and Jordan, which puts the ISIS militants steps closer to taking over the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. Also, insurgents firmed their grip over the region by taking 4 more strategically important towns, effectively controlling at least 70% of the western province of Anbar. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in Baghdad on Monday as part of his tour in the Middle East. Speaking earlier in Egypt on Sunday, Kerry warned that the militants pose a grave threat to regional peace.
ISIL is a threat to all of the countries in the region. Even today in our conversation with President al-Sisi and with the foreign minister, both expressed deep concerns about the impact of a group like ISIL and what it means to the region. No country is safe from that kind of spread of terror.
Kerry also urged Iraq's leaders to put aside their sectarian differences, quickly form a more inclusive government, and unite against the militant threat to avoid an all-out civil war.
I see now. More than 500,000 residents in Hong Kong have cast their ballots in an unofficial referendum on democratic reforms against the Chinese government. What are we to make out of this turnout, Paul?
Organizers say it's widely exceeded expectations, drawing over 680,000 people in the first 3 days of the 10-day voting period. That's roughly 1/10 of Hong Kong's total population. Voters are casting their say in whether the city-state should have a democratic ballot law from Beijing. The pro-democracy group Occupy Central has extended the electronic polls by another week after the voting website was frozen due to an apparent cyber attack. They also opened 15 physical polling booths across Hong Kong on Sunday. An Son Chan, the former chief secretary of Hong Kong, said she hoped Beijing would take note of the turnout.
Because we've seen so many efforts in the past few weeks to obstruct and to prevent us from coming out to vote. The fact that already in the first 2 days of voting, we have over 500,000 voters casting their vote and expressing their desire for genuine universal suffrage. I hope that this is a message that the government will take into account.
China has called the vote illegal and invalid. Beijing says Hong Kong can go ahead with an election for the city's top leader in 2017, but only from a pool of candidates pre-selected by a nominating committee.
And finally, Paul, health authorities in Saudi Arabia have developed a new treatment against the deadly outbreak of the MERS virus that we talked about, which claimed the lives of over 200 patients so far. So how does this new treatment work?
Well, Saudi Arabia's health ministry said on Sunday that they have been able to create new antibodies that are reportedly able to prevent the MERS coronavirus from attaching to human cells, thus preventing any potential infections. Confirmed cases of Middle East respiratory syndrome, or MERS, have now surpassed over 700 in the Middle Eastern country, with a handful of cases in Europe and North America. The severe respiratory disease causes cough and fever, which can lead to pneumonia and kidney failure. Dr. Abdullah Asuri, the director of the country's Disease Prevention Center, said the breakthrough could significantly help patients and hospital workers alike.
These are, I think, very important progress in the management of respiratory of MERS coronavirus, because now we have, a goal that this antibodies, if they are produced in good quantities or in enough quantities, can be used to protect people who were in exposure, unprotected exposure.
MERS is considered a deadlier cousin of the SARS virus, although not as contagious. International experts are still searching for a cure or vaccine for MERS, but are hailing these new antibodies as the next best thing. Chetty?
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Good to have you with us as always, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. Time now to get a check on the weather conditions with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, what a rainy and stormy start to the week. Are we in some for monsoon rain now?
Not yet, because monsoon season here in the central regions is set to begin in July, which is later than in previous years. Now, a heavy rainfall warning was issued for Seoul earlier today, as we got to see over 20 millimeters per hour of heavy downpours, but that has since been lifted. Well, shifting our focus to World Cup weather for a moment, on Friday, 5 a.m. Korea time, Team Korea faces Belgium in Sao Paulo. Unfortunately, drizzly conditions are forecast there throughout the week, and tomorrow's daytime highs will hit 21. Back here in the country, most regions should continue to see sporadic showers through later tonight, and please keep in mind that the showers may be accompanied by strong winds and possibly hail, so an umbrella is a must if you're headed outdoors, and please be careful if you're driving. On to Tuesday's readings. Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju hit the high 20s, while Busan peaks at 25. As for other places, well, Jeju reaches 25, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 20 and 23. That'll do it for this hour, but I'll be back with more after 10.
All right, thanks so much, Bo-kyung. Now, that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.